Special guest in Word in Your Attic today is Gary Crowley. Gary, is that your actual attic?
No, it isn't. It isn't. No, I've got a top floor flat, but sadly no attic. And I mean, we're actually doing this in my front room.
So how are you getting on in the current situation?
I've been sort of rifling through all sorts of old cassettes, which I'm going to show you later, books and records. And I mean, that's been the interesting thing over the last, 3-4 weeks is, finding bits and pieces that, I'd either forgotten about or I hadn't listened to or read, so
have you tackled any albums that you've just not listened to for years? Because Dave and I have found we've gone back to old albums that now we've got the time to address them. We've had a crack at it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, certainly a bit of that, Mark. I mean, doing the radio show, I mean, I'm always listening to new stuff anyways. But yeah, a lot of that, and like I said, reading a little bit more as well. In fact, I pulled out a book which I'm looking forward to, to kind of getting stuck into, which I'll tell you about a little bit later on.
What have you got in your show and tell, Gary?
Okay, well, we've got to start with these four.
Of course.
And Ringo, because they were such an influence on me. I don't think I would have ended up doing, what I went on to do. Once I kind of discovered these guys, and it was via Tony Palmer's All You Need Is Love documentary, which I, vividly remember watching. And there was a whole program, dedicated to these guys. And I always remember this fellas, I think I've got this right. It started with them at the Cavern. And I just, doing Some Other Guy.
Yeah.
I found it so electrifying, and that just sort of sent me off on the journey, really. And this would have been a record that I would have bought at the time.
What is it?
It's
the American version.
Songs, Pictures and Stories of the Fabulous Beatles.
So it's effectively Please Please Me, but you get a fact file, you get a little bit of writing about the boys as well.
I see. God.
But it's interesting. It's a lovely sleeve. I mean, I haven't played it for about 40 years or something, but it was all down to them, and to kind of interview two of them, over the years. I mean, I think you two guys have both interviewed, Paul.
Well, not that I'm keeping count, but I've done 8 McCartneys, 3 Harrisons, and 1 Starr. I'm not. And obviously, it'd be tragic to have remembered the exact number.
He wears the Beatles crown today.
He certainly does. So yeah, I'm not going to compete with that at all. Very good. So what's next, Gary?
Of course, by 1976, I was buying the music papers and hearing about this thing called punk, and hearing about this band called The Jam.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as I started reading about them and reading interviews, Paul was one of the kind of few people I think that at that time sort of name checked the Beatles as an influence.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
It was and I loved the Clash. The Clash ran The Jam a very, very close second, but obviously it was no Elvis, no Beatles, or the Rolling Stones in 1977. So that kind of made them more attractive for me.
So that's autographed.
That was autographed. It is. So I. It's funny because I was never a great one for getting autographs, but the first time that I interviewed Paul Weller, I went along. I spoke to him on the phone in a phone box. He invited me up to Stratford Place to Polydor Records the next day. I mean, unbelievable, really. And me and a pal went, and I thought, well, I've got to get it signed and everything. And then about 30 years later, I interviewed Bruce and Rick for a DVD, and I thought, do you know what? I never got their autograph.
Get the rest.
Well. So, brilliant.
And yeah, that's right. So
you interviewed him in a phone box.
Well,
that was for your fanzine. Was that for your fanzine? It was, wasn't it?
That was for my fanzine, Mark. Yeah. So we had a phone box outside the school, and that became my office at lunchtimes. And I saw a Melody Maker fact file which had his dad's contact number on there, and I thought, well, hold on, his dad's the manager of the band. I'd already read that, and I rang up, and Paul's mum, picked the phone up, and I did my shtick, I did my spiel, 20 to the dozen. She told me to calm down, shouted out Paul, and then 2 minutes later, he was on the phone, and then he said, "Listen, why don't you come up to Polydor Records tomorrow
and stop bothering my mother?"
Yeah.
but I didn't. I carried on bothering him and also the parents as well. But no, again, I mean, they were a really, really important band, you know, for me for those reasons. But punk was really, really important for me because, you know, that whole sort of have a go attitude, you know, I think sort of, you know, kind of trickled down to me and a whole host of other people.
So what else you got, Gary?
I, you know, I started working on Capital Radio through meeting a producer called Tony Howe, who kind of got me in. And this was a book that I bought back in the 90s about Ossie Clark.
The Ossie Clark Diaries.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Honestly, it is absolutely, you know, fascinating. And the reason why I bought it was this would have been the mid-late 90s. There was a 2-part South Bank show documentary on him that a very talented lady called Susan Shaw directed. And David Thewlis is basically reading out his diaries. And it's excellent. I don't think it's online, but I can remember going to buy it and you know, devouring it almost immediately. And then I got to page, you know, 166, and Ollie's, and it's very, very lively. It's very colourful. You know, this book, but the entry for the 3rd of April, and this was 1985. The Butterfly Ball at Stringfellows with Henrietta. She edited the diaries. Henrietta Roos, I think it is. Janet Street Porter, very friendly. Angie Best, coveting my jacket. Gary Crowley.
Yeah,
so that's all.
You're in the index, presumably. That's great.
Well, one of my favourite sort of throwouts on the radio shows that we do every now and then is whose life would you like to see made into a film?
Movie, yeah.
And this guy, I can't recommend these diaries.
No, sure.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Because famously people will know him, well, the fashion designer, but also people will know him from the famous David Hockney pictures of paintings of Ossie Clark, Celia Birtwell.
With the cat, is it? That's right.
And Percy.
Yeah,
Percy, well done.
Honestly,
designed Mick Jagger's wedding outfit, I think I'm right.
He did. And the Stones are all over it. This book, you know, Dave Gilmour was very good friends with him. In fact, tried to help him because he had this amazing rise. And then boy, did he hit the buffers, you know, wasn't very good with money. And
as happens with so many people.
Well, that's true.
What else he got?
Okay, so again, we're going to fast forward now to the 1990s. I hope you're enjoying this.
Yeah, go.
Yes. Time travel.
Hasn't been too much of the bumpy ride so far. So we're going to fast forward to about 1993, and you know, David, we would have been working at GLR at this time.
Yeah, yes.
It's funny again, just kind of sort of thinking about this and you know, thinking about that time, because I think I was doing a couple of shows a week, but money was a little bit tight at the moment. In fact, at that time, the flat that I had previously, I think I was very close to sort of having to kind of sell it. And then this program, this late night TV program called The Beat happened. This would have been, as I said, about 1993. So, you know, we're coming out of kind of grunge, and you know what became known as kind of Britpop was beginning to show, you know, green shoots. But it was a terrific program to do. It's funny because, you know, thinking back to some of those things that I did as a kid, I wasn't ready. You know, incredibly inexperienced, but I think when this came along, it was only ever meant to last for a couple of months. And the program, you know, went on for something like just under 3 years. My bank manager, you know, at the beginning, I can remember at the beginning would sort of ignore me basically. But once the program...
Once you're on telly, different story.
Once you're on telly, he was like, oh, I saw you last night, Gary, walking around in circles. But it was a terrific program, you know, to do. We did a lot of, you know, early interviews with, you know, kind of people who would, you know, go on to bigger and better things. Famously Oasis. We did Noel and Liam in.
You did the first TV interview, wasn't it?
We did, yeah. I think, they performed on another program, Mark. But I think I'm right in saying we did the first TV interview. And again, I always remember that. I remember that vividly because they were playing across the road at the Marquee when it was on the Charing Cross Road, and I was meant to go and see a film that night, to review for the program, and bowled over by these two guys, not backwards in coming forwards. I mean, there was an edge to them as well, but there was also a charm. You really did enjoy sort of being around them. Well, I did anyway. And I remember Snow saying at the end of it, because I hadn't seen them by that time, and I think it was either the first or the second single. He said, "Look, you should come and see us tonight." I said, "I've got to go and see this film, though." He said, "No, you should really, really come." I went, "Okay, all right, will do." And I remember going, and it really was pretty amazing. I mean, the audience was so up for it. Those early shows, I mean, the audiences kind of made it, really. I mean, they really had a kind of punky sort of edge. It could kick off at any moment, really. So, but we did some amazing people on this program. I mean, I got to interview Jack Lemmon.
Oh, right, very good.
How does that
one
happen?
of my
That's extraordinary.
He was promoting Grumpy Old Men.
Right.
And to be in that fella's company for half an hour, I mean, that was one of the few times I think my dad was kind of impressed.
Was impressed.
Yeah, he would be.
Very impressed.
Yeah.
But also people like Alan J. Pakula, who's a fantastic director. I mean, from some of the kind of film grades. We did Townsend, we did Robert Plant, a very surreal interview I remember with Sinead O'Connor on a barge going up the Grand Union Canal, where she'd sort of kind of run into problems being interviewed by the press. I think that she'd felt that she'd been sort of misquoted, so we had to send the questions ahead. And Sinead was sat next to me on this barge going up the Grand Union Canal, reading out the answers. It was quite surreal to say the least.
Sounds riveting.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you think, where as it's going on, you think, in years to come, I'll look back on this and I'll think,
this will make a good
was
story.
I really on the Grand Union Canal with Sinead O'Connor? Yes, I was. Well,
I've got, it's funny, if I was to turn the camera that way, there's a whole cupboard that's full of these VHSs from that programme.
So you've got them. Do you ever look at them?
I've got all of them. The last time was a couple of months ago. Two pals of mine made a little mini documentary, which is up on YouTube if anyone wants to see it, called, what's it called again? The Lives, Hairstyles and Music of Gary Crowley.
We'll put a link to that with this.
We'll plug that.
Yeah.
Hairstyles, I like it.
So I had a look at some of the old stuff, and surprisingly, the quality is mostly good. There's about 220 VHSs squeezed into that cupboard.
Yeah, Mark and I find our old whistle test stuff just turns up on YouTube in bits. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In individual sessions. And so people always get in touch with you saying, I saw you introducing so-and-so last night.
And you can never remember it.
I go, I have no memory. I never met them. I was never in the same room as them or whatever, or Blue Oyster Cult or whatever, whoever it is.
Yeah. Fish from Marillion.
Fish from Marillion, I certainly remember.
We all did Fish from Marillion.
Yeah,
we all did our time with Fish from Marillion. You couldn't get rid of Fish from Marillion.
Real name, Derek Dick.
Real name, Derek Dick.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. You'd call yourself Fish, wouldn't you, if you were called Derek Dick?
I'm gonna dine out on that today. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So what have you got to bring us up to date, Gary?
Okay. So just to kind of sort of go full circle, really, fellas. When I came in last year and saw you two, and was a guest on the Word in Your Ear, podcast, which I really enjoyed, by the way. I was plugging.
We enjoyed having you.
You were terrific.
Well, it was really, really good fun. It was the first interview, that I did, and I thought, great. If they're all going to be like that, then this is going to be good, and they were. And in actual fact, talking about, that Lost 80s collection, and this is kind of bringing it full circle, boys. I went to Woking to do like a signing thing. And, you know, it was at a venue called the Fiery Bird. I got there early. A friend of mine, Stuart, came down with me. And there was a couple of girls there. So this was about sort of 6:30. I think doors were opening at 7 o'clock. And then this lady walked in, you know, a little bit older. I'm guessing about, she must have been sort of mid-70s. I think she had a walking stick. Anyway, she was sort of sat near us. I was talking to these girls, and then this lady, you know, came over, and she said, "Do you remember me, Gary?" And you know, I did that thing of panic whenever somebody sort of says that, you know, but a little bit of stuttering. And she said, "I used to be your librarian at Church Street Market." And she said, "I remember you very, very well." And as soon as she said that, her name was Nova, by the way. As soon as she said that, you know, I got it straight away. I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, I remember you." And she said, "I remember you coming in and, you know, we would order up these Beatles books for you." This would have been about 1975, 1976. She said something along the lines of, and she did say this, you know, "I always knew that you were gonna go on and do something." She said, "Listen, I've got a little present for you because I know how much of a Beatles fan you are. This is for you."
Oh, wow.
And it's a Beatles program. I'm guessing from 1964, Beatles Limited.
Oh, that's nice.
So this must have been, you know, the worldwide tour program.
Oh, really? It's early merchandise. It's early merchandise.
Yeah.
Merch.
I mean, the photographs are absolutely
Is that the With the Beatles outtake on the front? It is, isn't it? That's fabulous.
Yeah, I'm guessing that a lot of these would have been Robert Freeman photographs.
Yeah, it's a With the Beatles shot, isn't it? Yeah.
But she said, "Listen, I want you to have that." And I said, "Nova, I can't take that. No, it's probably worth something. No, I really want you to have it." And then she squeezed my arm, and then she said, "Listen, I've got to go." She said, "Coronation Street's on in 10 minutes. It was lovely to see you."
Priorities.
Out of my life.
That's how most women take their leave of you, Gary.
Who's been talking?
There's something more pressing.
Gary, it's been a delight talking to you.
Thanks for asking me, guys. Really enjoyed it.
You.
It's been lovely to see you. And stay safe, as we're all saying. And have a good day. Cheers.
And you guys as well. See you on the other
You
side.
too. See you.